Alright, thank you everyone. Now, before I begin, like others before me, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on stolen land. And in doing so, touch on something that a lot of people here that I've seen through the years have put in practice, but which isn't done when the acknowledgement is done in the Houses of Parliament and in so many other areas. And that is, in our acknowledgement, we must also be taking action. We must be standing in solidarity with First Nations people. We must be putting our bodies on the line for First Nations people who are the most marginalised people in this country. And that's what we're here doing today, and that is what we should all be proud of in coming down to these events and this occupation. So a big thank you to Carolyn and Rachel from Action for Public Housing, without whom this whole action and occupation would not be possible. They have led the way in taking action that workers across Australia know is necessary, and that is long overdue. And in coming down here today and in the last few days, we are striking back. We are saying now is the time, and we are drawing the line in the sand. Now, for those who don't know, the Australian Communist Party and our group, the Community Union Defence League, have been doing a weekly kitchen for the homeless at Martin Place for the last few years. And we have steadily seen the crisis grow. Even since we were last down here where we do drop-offs of leftover food at the park here, there are now 24 or so homeless people sleeping under railway arches every night.
Shame.
And at the same time, they think it's fit to build a $750 million of a fish market that I've never fucking been to, when there's an existing one right there. It's all frozen fish anyway, exactly. Now, we are also currently engaged in a housing campaign across the nation, but here in Sydney, we've been doing this in Fairfield Council, which is one of the hardest hit areas in Australia for the housing crisis. Now, most people here would be aware as well that it is a predominantly non-English speaking background area as well. And yet in this community, people are facing in certain suburbs, more than 50% are dealing with rent and mortgage stress. At average, when we broke down the census statistics, after paying rent or their mortgage repayments, people in Fairfield City Council are left with $200 a week to live off.
Shame.
If you actually pay for your groceries, then you're flat out being able to get a bag of groceries for half of that. So we all know how serious the crisis is getting. Now, we also know that the solution to the housing crisis is not to be found in demolishing existing public housing and putting in social housing that is very vaguely defined, but it is in the construction of affordable, habitable public housing for all. Yet this government wants to tear down public housing in the midst of a housing crisis. Now, I just want to touch on the work of the staunch Hands Off Glebe, who many of you are familiar with, and a lot of people here were present at the launch of the Franklin Report, which Hands Off Glebe put together. Now, one of our more savvy friends who took notes of that meeting remembers and wrote down when an activist who was here today asked Rose Jackson what their plan was for 82 Wentworth Park Road. Rose Jackson, in classic pre-election mode, said, "I think we're going to leave that one." Leaving that one is not fucking knocking it down.
Yeah, that's right.
And yet, Labor is continuing to force residents to be evicted, is pushing people into early graves, is pushing people into depression, into mental illness, into physical illness, all in the midst of a housing crisis, while across the road, people are freezing their fucking asses off in tents in the middle of winter. We all know that we must fight back, and we all know as well that we can win. And that hope is important, which the speaker just before, I'm sorry I forgot your name, comrade, but Declan touched on it. We have seen the legends in our city and other cities across this nation lead the way before us. Rachel mentioned the other day that it's 50 years since Victoria Road. And we saw there that unionists, students, activists, residents, local potheads, anyone was able to unite and come together to fight and save public housing and tell the rich, fuck off, we built this city, we run this city, and we're gonna live here. Now, it is our turn to fight back. It's not the 70s anymore. We've got more repressive laws. We've got 50 years of capitalist propaganda that have beaten into people these defeatist mentalities. But Rachel and Carolyn and Dennis and all these other activists have come together to show us that we can win, but we can only do it united. We are not outnumbered, we are not overpowered, we're out-organised. And the only strength we have is each other and organisation. So I say this, seize the time, make our history now, because it's our turn. Say yes to public housing, and we're not letting one fucking brick of this building go. Take care, comrades.